Hey everyone, Brendan here, aka Cliff Jumper. Welcome back to the channel, and today we are turning our attention back to the long ignored R32. She's been sitting and resting for a little while because at the beginning of summer I started to see the coolant temperatures creeping up, especially in traffic, and that concerned me. So we're going to do some cooling system refreshing because there are some things wrong with my nearly 20-year-old R32. Let's get into it and deal with this. So sure enough, driving along, and I was noticing that especially on warm days, which we have a lot of here in Southern California, the R32 was getting a bit warm. Now, I do have the color MFA cluster by Matthew Litke, and as part of his service, he reprogrammed my cluster so that my temperature gauge, which is usually conditioned, usually it's either straight up and down when it's within the normal range, and it only goes high when you're above like a really abnormal range of temperatures. Normally that's how a Volkswagen coolant gauge works on a Mark IV. You can turn that off though, and you can actually see the real temperature. So I've been monitoring that, and a little high temperature is kind of normal in traffic, but I was watching it consistently get warmer than it really needed to be, and that had me concerned. So sure enough, when I started to do the regular diagnostic procedure to see what was going on, I noticed a few things happening. One of my two radiator fans, there's one on this side, one on that side, one of them was not working at all. And when I ran power directly to it, only the high part of it works, not the low. So that was allowing the temperatures to come up. At the same time, I started to notice some noise from my water pump, just a little bit, coming from that pulley, and that had me concerned. I thought, well, she's almost 20 years old. It's the original water pump. It's about time. I wonder what condition the water pump is. So probably about time. So I started to collect all the parts that I needed to replace the water pump, both fans, because if I'm going to do one, I may as well do them both. And while I'm in there, I'll do the thermal fan switch as well. I have another fan controller module also, just in case this one turns out to not be in good shape. But if I recall, I think I replaced this one already about 10 years ago. Maybe not 10 years, maybe 5 years ago, I replaced that. That's a really common thing in a Mark IV, and this is not immune to the common Mark IV issues. Also, the coolant in this car is the original nearly 20-year-old coolant, so it's time for a coolant flush. I may as well, while I'm in there flushing the coolant, change out the thermostat housing to the metal housing, change the coolant pipe to the metal pipe, change the thermostat to the low temperature thermostat so everything is working well. So we're going to do a whole revamp on this. And if you know Volkswagens, you know that in order to do the water pump on this car, that's the queen of while you're in there jobs. Because while you're in there, you may as well replace the serpentine belt tensioner and the serpentine belt. And you have to remove the motor mount in order to get to any of that. So I may as well replace the motor mount. So I'm going to be doing the motor mount on that side and that side. I've already replaced the dog bone mount underneath. So we're in for a bit of work to freshen up the R32 and get her ready for some fall driving. I have not been driving her in summer because I didn't want to risk overheating and doing damage to the original motor as it stands. So that's what we are going to get into today. Let's see how much we get done.
5 minutes later.
Well, this is definitely a in the nick of time project. I stopped driving the R32 back in June because I was seeing the temperatures creep up a little bit, and I was aware that one of the radiator fans was not working properly, so I didn't want to risk overheating the car. I also started hearing some noise from the water pump, and I suspected that the serpentine belt tensioner was also on its way out. It was getting a little squeaky. Well, I just apparently when I parked the car, this belt breathed its last, because look at that. It is toast. That tensioner pulley is completely seized up. So we're gonna Yeah, I can see, spots down in there that we are going to have to do some cleanup and some attention to this. Yeah, so we are in to replace that the water pump down there, the tensioner pulley, the belt, clean this up. We replace that motor mount, and as long as we're in there, we're also going to do that motor mount. We've got a lot of access to it, so it shouldn't be too hard. Knock on carbon fiber. And both of the radiator fans, and then we're going to have the whole front end off of here, so we may as well at that point do the thermostat housing, the thermostat, and the coolant pipe that runs underneath, just to make sure all of that's taken care of, because we are going to have to flush all the 20-year-old coolant out of the system as part of this process. So we're in for a good bit of work, and yeah, that seals the deal. It has to be done. Here's a fun little while you're in there. Remember that hose that we did a repair on, like the real, Ghetto Fabulous rescue hose repair on that? Yep, that hose there. Well, somebody found a source for me. I was able to get the actual hose from Euro Tuning. So we have a brand new old stock hose. We are gonna slap that on there while we're at this. So the first step to dealing with this, of course, is we need to remove the front, get it in service position so we have access to everything. And on my particular R32, I also have the factory steel skid plate underneath. So I have to remove that to get access to stuff over on that side of the engine, as well as to be able to support the engine with a jack when I'm changing the motor mount. So that's all gotta come off. These markers seem like they're splitting a little bit, so I'm going to reseal them with RTV before we put them back as well, just to keep water out of them. A couple more of these Torx bolts up inside here. We got, well, actually this is a deep socket 10mm, and if I recall, there might be another Torx in there. I might be confusing it with a regular Mark IV, but yeah, we got to get rid of those right there. Incidentally, if you've been around the R32 community for a while, this is the same rigid tool that I won back at the raffle for SoCal R32 Gathering number 2 back in the day at VF. So yeah, thank you. That was donated by a member of the R32 community to the raffle, and it's still faithfully serving me, so thank you for that. Last thing we need to do is remove these inner bolts along the bottom there. They're more Torx, so we'll get those on both sides, and that'll allow us to remove the front end. All right, now that the splash guards are removed and out of the way, now we can pull off the rest of the bumper. I'm going to support it from the middle here, and there we go. It's nice and lightweight, comes off, cool. And now we can see the steel skid plate that we need to remove to be able to have access up here to the belt and all that fun stuff. So just a few more bolts to get this off. Whenever I have the steel skid plate off, I'm going to inspect it for, you know, impact damage and subsequent corrosion damage. So I have some areas where the paint's gotten scraped off, got a little bit of surface rust there. I'm going to scrape that with a brush, hit it with some rust treatment, and repaint it while I have this off the car so that it'll stick with me for a while longer. The inside looks all right. Got some water there. All right, great, cool. Now to finish getting this in service position, we have to remove that bolt, one down there, and the same on the other side. That one, and one down there. And I think, no, there's a couple more that hold the power steering hose in place, and there's a couple more right here. And that releases the actual metal bumper, and then we should be able to remove the whole front clip together, at least angle it out of the way. That will give us access to the radiator fans. So that gives us just enough room to be able to swing this out. This is just loose enough now. I can stick my arm down in there nicely and unbolt the radiator fan shroud, and I should be able to pull the shroud straight up and out of there. We are going to be draining all the coolant, so I don't mind unhooking the radiator and just draining it. There should be a radiator petcock available. No. This one does not have one available. It does have the hose clamp thing that I can release on the bottom and empty out all the coolant, or I can do the weird clippy plug thing there that also I think I just replaced on my son's car, so pretty familiar with that at this point. And while we're down here, let's see what's going on here. Looks like there's an oil leak. I don't like that. I wonder if it's just doesn't appear to be coming from high, so I wonder if it's just is this leftover from an oil change? Is it dripping out of my drain here? Kind of looks like it. I'm gonna get back under there and look, see what's going on. Okay. It's not dripping from higher up, so yeah, looks like I've just got just a little seepage right around the drain here. So I'll put a new crush washer, clean it up, and make sure it's sealed. So I guess oil change time? Yeah, I guess so. So I'm not entirely displeased with the progress we're making so far. So now that the headlight's out of the way, I can actually reach through here to get to that connector, squeeze it, remove, and with the ballast out of the way, which most people shouldn't have to deal with if you're doing this on your car. You can now get to the plastic bolt that holds in the washer reservoir. There we go, that's off, and there's one more straight down that is now also accessible since I've got the ability to stick my hand down in here. It's right behind this hose right there. Now this whole assembly, because there's hoses go into it. I usually just pop the whole thing off and let it spill a little bit out as I'm removing it. So I'm just gonna pop this straight up and off, and then try to plug the hole with my thumb while I remove that without losing too much. And for people who like clean stuff, this is a good opportunity to clean it. So I'm gonna give that a good wipe off before I put it back in the car. And of course we can clean all of that as well as we're working and fixing. But now that this is out of the way, I've got good access to everything I need to access right in there to deal with the serpentine belt tensioner, which is failed. And then we can start moving this stuff out of the way as well. Little pro tip here, if you are needing to keep track of a lot of different bolts, as I am, you can use the cardboard method. So just as I take out different bolts and screws, stick them into the cardboard and write what they are actually for. That way I can keep them straight and in the right orientation as I'm putting them back, and that I don't mess up by missing parts that need to go back. So in the process here of removing the coolant bubble and the reservoir here, I managed to break this evap hose, which is super brittle from age. So hopefully this is still available. If not, I'll just replace it with some vacuum hose. And yeah, this is, I mean, technically I could still use this section and then just do vacuum hose from there to there. So it's not a horrible big deal, but I do want to keep everything as factory correct as possible. I'm also realizing that my fuel line is looking pretty perished, so I don't want to fire. So I may replace the fuel line as well. Another one of those while you're in there kind of things. So I'll see if that's available and do both of them, both the supply and the return. Get those both done while we've got access and they're here. All right, so let's see if we can remove the ruined belt tensioner here. Okay, used a much bigger screwdriver, my convincer, and I was able to get that little bracket off of the bolt that we need, which frees up the rest of this 13mm bolt that we need to undo to free the tensioner pulley. Alright, there is the bolt, and oh yeah, look at that carnage. This is, yep, that was done. Completely seized up and destroyed the belt, caused a lot of issues. So yeah, that's what can happen when your tensioner pulley bearing goes bad. Alright, cool. This is trash. Here's some other parts of the pulley that fell out down below, and the belt itself is shredded. I'm gonna have to pull the belt out from underneath because it's stuck, because it did get shredded and it came out of its grooves. It's stuck under the power steering pulley, so that's fun. But we'll get it out and look at the rest of the carnage from this. Yeah, there's some melted plastic stuck in various spots from the pulley. Yeah, all right, that was good times. And of course, the R32 being the special girl that she is, you can't just take off the serpentine belt. There is a bracket here for the power steering that it's right back here. That has to come off in order to get off the belt. So you remove a 13mm nut that is hidden back there in the darkness, and then you can take off the belt. All right, we want to get the power steering reservoir out of the way. I'm going to see if I can do it without actually having to disconnect it completely and have to re-bleed the power steering system. Anyway, there's a deep socket 10mm right here that has to come out, and that lets us move this. So hopefully with it just being flexy, we can push it over out of the way over there, and that should give us enough room to deal with our motor mounts and the water pump. So at this point, I do want to go find my special tool for the water pump pulley. It holds those bolts in place, holds the pulley in place, so I can loosen those bolts. And we'll need to undo the motor mount bolts here. And I gotta go find my motor mounts. I've got some BFI ones that we're gonna be replacing and putting on here. So making good progress. Now we are at the point where we're removing the motor mount. So I've gotten the 2 bolts here, that bolt. I'm working on this bolt here, and then this motor mount should be free, and then we can jack the motor up just a little bit to get access to the water pump pulley and be able to remove that. If you're not familiar, these bolts have a real tendency to get messed up. As you can see, the end of this. These are one-time use bolts. I will be putting new ones in, and I'll be chasing the threads to make sure that I don't screw anything up in there while I'm in this process. But now the motor mount's free, and this is, oh wow, it's like just completely collapsed and mush. So yep, definitely time to replace this sucker. It is done. I have a special tool to hold the water pump pulley in place while we undo these bolts, but as you can see, this is probably a 2-person job. One to hold that in place and one to undo this so that we don't get off center and accidentally screw up that bolt or strip it. That would make this a miserable job. So I'm gonna wait for my friend to show up before I do that.
20 minutes later.
I missed the exciting part. We did do a double team on getting the water pump pulley bolts off. They came off really nicely. We've actually got the new pump in place already, and we're getting its bolts back in. So yeah, this is going really well, other than the one hose that I broke in the middle of this. All right, so if you are doing if you are doing the belt tensioner and the belt on the R32, we've discovered that the easiest way to get the belt back on is thread the belt, but put the tensioner pulley with the belt on it first, and then tighten this down on the block. If you put the pulley on first and then try to slip the belt around it, it's a pain in the neck and it's just not gonna happen. So kind of looping the belt over it and then bolting it in place, that makes it work. So we've got the water pump in place, we've got the belt tensioner back in, belt is tensioned, and now we're putting on that, which I'm going to throw on the ground and mess up the threads. But this is the Black Forest Industries Stage 1 street mount. So as they recommend, we're going to start the bolts. We're We're going to leave it a little bit loose so that we can move it around once we've got the engine back in its proper place, because I have moved it forward a little bit while we were monkeying with this. And then after that, we'll lower it, we'll get it all situated before we actually torque everything.
Twenty minutes later.
The water pump is in, the belt tensioner belt is tensioned, the new motor mount is in and torqued. We've got the power steering reservoir reattached and back in place. The washer fluid reservoir is back and in place. The only thing we're lacking right now at this point is the coolant bubble. I decided to order a new one because the old one is, you know, the typical yellow from being 20 years old. And the other thing I have to do is I am fabricating a new emissions hose that goes from this purge valve right here to the intake manifold hose right there. So that broke. It was a hard line. It was 20 years old and brittle. So I'm making a new one, and I'll do that tomorrow. In the meantime, the next thing we are attending to is the radiator fans. So just 4 bolts and a couple of electrical connections, and we can release all of that. So I was just mentioning to my friend Valentino here, who's been helping me get this stuff done. There are 2 ways to drain an R32. The first is you can release the quick release tab on here, but the only thing is you need to replace the O-ring on that connector if you do that, and I don't have that O-ring with me right now, so I don't want to do that. So I just used the hose clamp pliers, pull the hose off of that connector, and we're draining the coolant that way. And then as soon as the coolant is done there, I'll be freed up to replace the, see that for a second, the thermal fan switch, which is in the side of the radiator right there. So we'll deal with that at the same time that we're dealing with the fans. So there's just a few connections to undo, and we'll be able to get those out and get those replaced. Notably, hiding right there is one connector down near the bottom, over there at the top, and then again down the bottom on the side.
2 hours later.
Okay, some project updates. We've been busy and I haven't been filming, but where we have gotten to is the new coolant bubble arrived, and I have reattached the radiator fans down in there. We have reattached the lower radiator hose up in here. The electrical connections are back together, and we are at the place where we can start putting coolant back in the system again, so we can do that and check for leaks and all that fun. Meanwhile, I have also effected a repair. As you may recall, I broke an emissions hose that normally, it's a hard plastic hose. It makes like a weird 90 degree. It goes around here and it connects back to this buddy here. I have created a replacement hose that goes underneath and back around to here. Here's what I used. It's something you can get at your auto parts store. It's a Dorman 5/32 by 3 foot. It's a hard emissions tubing. It's actually not that hard. It is hard in that it won't collapse under vacuum, but it's flexible enough that you can bend it around and do stuff. So you get this, and you get this kit here, the Dorman vacuum elbows, number 47431, and it comes with these. And what I've been able to do to replace that no longer available emissions pipe is the pipe, or sorry, this tubing you can cut to length and insert into these elbows, and the elbows then in turn fit into the vacuum fittings here. So I've got a 90 degree vacuum fitting going into the hard line. It's weaving back around to another 90 degree and into the hard line. So we have completed that circuit with new hard piping mischief managed on that for about $7. So if you happen to break that or notice that yours is leaking and you can't replace it, that's how you can go about fixing it on the cheap, and it'll be fine. All right, day 4 of the project so far. Yeah, we're doing a lot of work and it's taking a lot of time because I'm only able to do it in little bits and spurts. Like I'm sure many of you at home doing your projects, you got to do a little bit and then come back to it. So day 4, and of course, I like my neighbors. I'm just going to go on the record. Actually, I really love my neighbors. They're awesome. So no shade against my neighbors. It's just funny. The exact time that I come out here to do filming is the exact time they choose to go out in their yards and do yard work with power tools. So it's just funny. Anyway, hi neighbors, love you. Glad to have you as neighbors. Awesome. So anyway, we are continuing our work here and making progress. So today's project, we're gonna move the battery out of the way so we can remove this cover so we can do this motor mount on this side. So all of this has to come up and out of the way in order to make that happen. And then I think we're about ready to reattach the front clip. I'm gonna wait until I've done this motor mount just so I have a little bit more room just in case I need it to get to stuff. And you also may notice it's kind of dirty in there. I've never cleaned beyond this part of the manifold, so I'm gonna go ahead and just get some degreaser and stuff and clean up a little bit in there. I know nobody's gonna see it once this is back together, but I will know that it's dirty and that will bother me. So I will take care of that. Let's continue on. Continuing the operations here, we've removed the battery. I'm doing some cleanup of the electrical connections, just brushing them and putting some contact cleaner on just to make sure that everything's got good grounds, good connections. I'm gonna get down in there and get that ground, get as much as I can while I'm in here. But I also discovered that the intake is absolutely filthy, and is the mass airflow sensor. So we're gonna do some cleanup on this as well, as long as we are in here. Clean all of this out. Important thing to know about these, they are torque to yield bolts. Do not reuse them. When you install them, you stretch them, and if you try to reuse them, most likely they will break as you're trying to torque them down. So one use only. Once you remove these original ones, throw them away, they're done. Also recommend do not use power tools or air tools to remove them. They can break on removal. Just use a breaker bar and spin them out by hand. That is the smooth way to get them out, and that is the least likely method for breaking them as you're trying to remove them. At this point, there's nothing holding the motor mount in. It is just, oh, well, except for that, which I broke. I didn't see that bolt, so awesome. I will need to go in and remove that, which means I gotta take this off probably to get to it. And here is the new motor mount. So you can see the ear that's gonna go right to the thing that I just broke. So it has it attached. So no worries that I haven't like ruined anything. So we have found one small manufacturing defect with this BFI motor mount. These holes, the three right here, they do not line up with the holes that are on the frame of the R32. What I suspect is that this is supposed to have an elongated notch in it rather than a single drilled hole, and maybe they didn't finish machining this one. See how this has some space to wiggle it around and adjust? This one probably was intended to have that, but it does not. Therefore, I am gonna have to work some monkey magic to make it work, because I'm not going to wait for BFI to send me another one. So we will get this done. So a little note for anyone who might be watching from Black Forest Industries: your Mk4 R32 motor mounts, the new design, the transmission mount does not actually fit in the space, and it's not a matter of the well, the orientation. It's a matter of the side that actually mounts to the body. The holes are not in the right position compared to this, and there's not enough clearance right here. So I've had to do some modifications to make it fit. I had to elongate your holes here, open them up a bit, and I had to shave off a little bit from this edge to get it to actually sit in the place where it's supposed to sit on the body, flush, and line up with the holes, just so this can bolt in to the body. So maybe some further design refinery is needed. And for anybody who's installing these, just expect that you're probably going to have to do some modification in order for it to work. I mean, it's kind of the nature of aftermarket parts. That's part of the deal. But I know Black Forest tries to make stuff that just bolts right in, right off the shelf, so they got a little bit more work to do on this, and I'm sure it'll be perfect at that point. So one other tip, if you are installing both the driver side and passenger side motor mount and transmission mount, make sure you don't torque the one side down all the way before you have the other one started and placed and the motor lined up where it needs to be. It makes it a lot easier. So we now have all the bolts lined up, we've got the engine lined up where it's supposed to be, and now we can start tightening everything. Hopefully the home stretch now, we have completed all of the necessary work that we need to do. I did not get to this breather pipe yet. I can access that anytime I want to, so I'm not going to worry about it. I really just want to get the car back on the road today. So I am in the process of reassembling all of this stuff here, getting the intake, getting the covers, get the intake back on, the mass airflow sensor, the battery back in place, and it's all its accoutrements, and then I will get the front clip reattached, and then we should be able to drop her back on the ground and run her up to temperature. At that point, we'll probably have to adjust the level of the coolant once it's all gone through the system and burped, and then we should be good. So that's the plan. Let's see how much we get done. I'm aiming to have her back on the road today, so let's see. Down inside here, there are those hoses I need to put back into their brackets underneath as I'm sliding this whole front end clip back up into place. For most of them, it's just a matter of putting them back into those little brackets and snapping them shut again, so not a big deal. Just about done putting the finishing touches on, bolting in a few last things, and then we are good to put her back on the ground and do a test run. So almost there.
Twenty minutes later.
And just like that, she's all back together again and purring like a kitten. So I'm doing the warm up and letting the air burp out of here. So just kind of keeping the lid on very loosely while the air bubbles come out. When she's up to temperature and the thermostat has opened, all the air has come out, then I'll close that up again. But right now we're still in the process. But she sounds great. No weird pulley noises, no weird noises at all. She's running smoothly. So I am going to say that this is probably a job well done, mischief managed, and we are good to go. So I'm going to get cleaned up because I don't want to get into the car all disgusting and gross before we go for a test drive. And well, she's kind of disgusting and gross from sitting out here the last few months. I mean, the wheels are really pretty gross right now. All along the side sills. That's, yeah, there's just, she's a dirty girl and she is in dire need of a bath. So I'm gonna get cleaned up and then I'm gonna take the car out and clean the car and go for a nice drive. Check back with you in just a little bit. All right, we have function. So back up to speed with the R32. Woohoo! Cooling very nicely. All right, I'm gonna say mischief managed as far as the cooling system. Drove it to work today. No issues, nice and steady temperature in traffic despite Southern California heat. So I think we are good with the water pump and radiator fans and everything else we did in the cooling system. And we also found a few other problems along the way. So yeah, done with that, very happy with that. Hope it helped you out if you were following along with any of that, and if not, well, oh well. Thanks for tuning in. Hit like, subscribe. See you next time. Bye-bye.
And on that terrible disappointment, it's time to say goodbye. We'll be back.